Do you have a creative side? Maybe you're looking for a way to get creative. I have an idea. Let's talk about adding flavor to foods without adding more salt or butter. You can use your creativity to explore different flavors and follow your nose to find what goes well together and end up with some really tasty food without the extra sodium. So first, let's talk about citrus. I have a lime here. You can add lime juice, just fresh lime juice, to all kinds of foods. You might think of salsa. There's definitely lime juice in a lot of salsas. You can add it to fruit. One of my favorite fruit salads is just a mixture of fruit with lime juice and a little bit of honey. And something about that lime juice just really sends it to a next level. And then if you're getting fancy, you can use your lime zest. If you have a zester or microplane, use that to top your foods or add it to rice or any kind of like mixed dish, and it gives so much extra flavor. And you'll notice you don't need to add extra salt or toss butter in there or some other kind of ingredient you might be trying to limit. So I'm going to show you a trick for juicing a lime. This won't work quite as well for a lemon. It still works, but you have seeds in a lemon, and so those tend to fall out into what you're juicing it into. So first, take half your lime and just kind of poke it around. Make a bunch of holes. You start to see the juice come out. This one looks a little drier than some, but the fork really helps. So then I'm going to squeeze the lime into my measuring cup here. If you have a juicer, awesome, use that. I would be done already with both sides, but we don't always have that on hand, or the dreaded day it breaks and you can't use it, but you still need to get your lime juice or lemon juice. There we go. Lime juice is also excellent in water. You can add it to water or sparkling water to add some extra flavor without the sugar from other beverages. All right, so I'm nice and juiced there. Herbs pack a punch when it comes to flavor. You probably know this if you've ever smelled an herb, like basil. Think about what basil smells like. Or I have some thyme here. So they all have like their own unique flavor and aroma. What's funny is when I was little, the only time I ever saw probably any fresh herb, to be honest, was parsley, and it was a garnish that you immediately picked off to put to the side. But I've learned so much more about fresh herbs and how they can impact what we eat. And there's definitely some nutrition benefits in herbs, but you're also, really my goal is like to make the food taste good and to help you cut back on maybe some of those ingredients you're trying to steer away from. So let me show you some tips for herbs. Okay, so I have a box grater here. You can use any kind of grater that has similar holes, and I'm just going to send the stem through here, and I'm gonna pull it through. There's the parsley leaves, ready to be chopped. So that's one way to do it. All right, so we're gonna chop up this parsley. I'm gonna gather it into a little mountain here, and then I'm just gonna run my knife through and then gather it a little bit. Make sure you pull your knife away before you do the gathering, of course. And I'm not aiming for them to be a similar size. I'm not aiming to sort of chop them in, mince them into a little mush. Just get them into smaller pieces. What's happening when I do that, it's not just gonna help it spread throughout the food better, but it's also gonna release those oils in the leaves that give the flavor and aroma. So I have some fresh basil leaves here, and I'm making a little stack of them. As you can see, they're a little slippery, but we're gonna do our best. I'm gonna cut these into ribbons. So I'm gonna roll them as best I can for these little guys. And then just chop through them like that. So I get little ribbons that are gonna spread out. If you like them smaller, you can make it smaller. You can also just tear large leaves. You don't even have to break out your knife or cutting board if you just want to rip up a few basil leaves. Now let's talk for a second about where do I get these herbs. Every time I buy them at the grocery store, they end up going bad in the refrigerator. So a couple ideas here. One would be grow your own. I don't have much of a green thumb, but herbs, I've heard, are pretty easy as far as growing things goes. You can check out the link that goes with this video to learn more about growing your own herbs at home. And then you just have them ready to snip off, wash, give a little rinse, and use whenever you're like, this needs something else, this needs more flavor, or I want to try this herb with this food, and it'll be ready to go. So check that out if you're feeling adventurous, and maybe you already grow your own herbs and you want some growing tips, you can check out that resource. Other things, if you just buy them at the store or the farmer's market, one way you can protect them for a little longer is to wrap them in a paper towel. So take them out of if they're in a plastic bag or anything like that, wrap them in a paper towel and store them in a drawer in your fridge. Sometimes there may be some differences. So I'll have another resource to send you all that'll explain how best to store. Because if you have some herbs you love using all the time, that may not be the method that works best for those herbs, but you can check it out. All right, so I want to show you a few more herbs here. So this is thyme. It has kind of a sweet, like peppery scent to me. And these come on a pretty tender stem. And so these are kind of hard to get these little leaves off. And no one really has all the time to pluck off one little leaf at a time. So one way you can do it is you can try with your fingers and sort of just guiding it to see how that's breaking. That's not my favorite way. One trick is if you have a mesh strainer, you can try using this to get the leaves. Whoops, there we go. And so there's still a little bit of stem on these, but honestly, if it breaks like that, if it's so tender, this is going to be perfectly fine to use in whatever capacity you're using it in. So you can chop it up a little bit to, again, release those oils a little more. Or if you're just tossing this bit into a salad, a little bit goes a long way with fresh herbs in a fresh salad. You can just toss it in there and mix it in with your greens and other ingredients. And it adds a whole new flavor for you. And last one I'll give a shout out to, dill. Dill is one you can sort of just scrape off with your fingers like that. And this is fresh dill. You can also get dried dill that you might mix in to make dips or sauces, but fresh works great as well. Another way to add lots of flavor is with spices and dried herbs. And so if you don't have the fresh ones, maybe you tried to grow them and it didn't work out, but you have a nice little cabinet or drawer full of some dried options, that's an excellent way to add flavor. Most of the time when they're dried, your spices and herbs are gonna need a little time to cook in the dish to impart the flavor, or at least like marinate with it. So I'm thinking like soups, stews, sauces. Those are excellent uses for dried herbs. Like think of dried oregano in tomato sauce. And then you also have cumin that we're gonna use here in a second. That can go, add a lot of great flavor to chilies and certain soups. So one thing that can save you a little bit of time and make your food more interesting is to make your own mix of these herbs and spices. So let's take a look at one of these. This is just called an everyday seasoning mix. And it's called everyday seasoning mix because you could use it every day on a ton of different foods. You could put it on chicken, you could put it on potatoes, you could put it on rice. You kind of get a feel for what you would like it on. So we're gonna do a couple of tablespoons of garlic powder. I would also recommend adding onion powder too, if you have that. Add a tablespoon or two of onion powder. Even if you don't like to eat onions themselves, onion powder can really give a nice overall flavor. So we're gonna use some dried parsley. So we had fresh parsley, but this is gonna be dried parsley. One word of caution is you're not gonna get as much flavor from dried parsley as you are the fresh. And also the longer your herbs and spices sit on the shelf, it's gonna be the same story. They're gonna lose that potency and you might not get much from it. Okay, black pepper. We're gonna do 2 teaspoons of just black pepper. It seems like a lot, but this seasoning mix is gonna be used for a while. Okay, and then we're gonna go to cumin. Cumin is a fun spice. As you can see, I'm not being super exact. It's okay if it's a little extra here or there. All right, now we have dried mustard seeds. So I'm gonna do a teaspoon of that, about a teaspoon. Okay, and lastly, we have some cayenne. Add a little heat. It's if you really like things more spicy, and remember, this is an everyday seasoning, so you're gonna probably use it in different ways. You can add more heat to it or less, but even if you add just maybe 1/8 of a teaspoon, it's not gonna be necessarily make it things spicy, but it gives you a little more depth to the flavors. All right, so I would add some onion powder. You could even do dried dill, like we had the fresh dill earlier. You could do some dried dill in here for a little sort of zing. We're gonna put the lid on our jar. You could use any kind of container you have. Leftover spice jars work great too. We will mix this up. You could do this every time you use it too, just to make sure, especially those parsley flakes are bigger. You could just give it a little shake. Now, so you can see it made about this much. You could double, triple the recipe, especially if you try it out and you love it. You can have it where you go through it quickly enough, it's gonna be fine. Store it where it's closed up. You don't wanna store it open because it'll get moisture and lose its flavor. But yeah, so try making an everyday seasoning for yourself with your favorite flavors. One more idea, instead of salt, let's think sugar. If we want sweetness in foods, like oatmeal or yogurt, but we don't want to add a whole lot of added sugar, like adding some honey, maple syrup, maybe a little brown sugar, that's great. You can pick up the flavor even more with cinnamon or like a pumpkin pie spice. So you can buy the pumpkin pie spice, or you could do your own mix with pumpkin pie spice, especially 'tis the season, so maybe something to try out. All right, so get cooking, get experimenting with the flavors, make your food taste good so you can get that nutrition without the extra salt.